Today we're going to be talking about globalization. And so globalization refers to the increasing interconnectedness of the world's economies, societies, and cultures through the rapid flow of goods, services, capital, and ideas across borders.
I think a good company to start with for highlighting what that means is McDonald's, probably. I mean, they're not in every country in the world, but they're in the majority of countries in the world and have an influence on every single one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
also
definitely.
McDonald's has special they have special people designed just to figure out where to place their buildings to make sure that they get the most amount of customers. And
Yeah.
there are other buildings such as other companies such as Burger King that basically look for McDonald's and then build their company and their restaurant next to McDonald's, because McDonald's spends like millions of dollars trying to figure out where the best location is to build their buildings, while the other companies just kind of leech off of McDonald's.
Yeah. They also probably do that just so they can try and steal a couple of their customers and try and promote and get more people to their restaurant instead of McDonald's. Because, obviously you would want more people to come to your restaurant than the competitor's restaurant. But the
Yeah,
reason McDonald's is so good is because, like you said, they're so strategic with where they place their buildings. They probably place it in big areas because they've already made their name so big that people are going to flock to that location. And other businesses could possibly, like other um, surrounding businesses, could possibly have a major downfall just because McDonald's is now so popular due to its rise of fame in the early 2000s.
yeah, and
So,
this is kind of how our world works. Like, this is how companies work, and honestly, a good bit of competition is a good thing, because like competition prevents monopolies and all that kind of things. Because if any one company has a monopoly over another, then, well, obviously that's not even like, I don't even think that's legal. Which is also why companies such as Google are actively funding Firefox, just so that they have like a legal excuse for being a monopoly.
yeah,
And I mean,
definitely.
to point that out and like say that the first multinational corporation was the Dutch East India Company, which we talked about recently. I mean, they just came across and are doing the same things McDonald's and Burger King and Google and Apple and everyone else are doing now. They just did it way before. So there's like historical evidence of this being a thing.
Yeah, and speaking of Apple, they also kind of are big too. Their biggest competitor though is Samsung. So they're one is not like really over the other. They're more of equivalent. But Apple's always trying to promote their brands to be better and always trying to make their iPhones seem better. Like adding all these cameras, having all these features, giving all these new iOS updates. They're probably doing this so they can make their phones and their devices seem better than Samsung.
Yeah, well,
So
you see, that's kind of like a marketing strategy. Usually, the rule of thumb is if something works good, then change very little and say that you changed a lot and try to convince people that you changed a lot, because that'll cause more people to want to buy it and more people to like just love your product because
yeah,
it works well and they know it works well. And then you say you have this big change, and even if it isn't very big, like they're still probably going to buy it.
yeah, and probably one of the reasons why Samsung isn't so big is because they're always trying to beat out Apple, probably by just changing their phones like completely, or always trying to introduce a new phone that just is going to seem and look better than Apple's, and always try to have different features that Apple doesn't have. So people are more drawn towards it, and they're like, "Oh, this looks better than Apple because they don't have this," so they'll go and buy it. So they honestly would probably profit more from that. But I still would say Apple would still beat them out because they, like you said, they change little things, but make it seem like they changed more. And people are like, wow, that's crazy. I want that. So,
Yeah, also I feel like Samsung is kind of like they're experimenting for Apple. Like, they're spending all the money completely reworking their design to see what works, and then Apple is just kind of watching and seeing what works. Just like, Burger King looks at where McDonald's places their buildings, Apple probably just looks at like other things and says, "Hey, that doesn't work. We don't need to add that to our phones."
Yeah, and I mean, if Samsung kind of just looked at what Apple was doing and started strategizing a little bit more like Apple, then they honestly probably would profit more. And even if they changed even more like little minute details, they probably could eventually become better than Apple. But I think Apple for now is going to stay one of the best phone companies. Just like how
Yeah,
McDonald's is
because
right now going to stay the best fast food
Yeah, because
restaurant.
people like to people tend to stick with things that they're familiar with. They don't really like to change things, such as like when there's a new Windows update or something, and it completely changes something. Which actually, I don't remember the last Windows update that actually completely changed anything. But like when there's a complete change to anything, there's going to be a lot of people that dislike it because they're used to using what they're using, and if it works good, they don't really want more change just for some small little feature.